Welcome to the Coach Speak podcast, built for coaches, by coaches, hosted by Jamie Bolton and Dustin Martin. Sponsored by Ray Crowther, providing the nation's best athletic training equipment since 1932. And R4 Football Systems. Accelerate everything by decoding the game.
Hey guys, welcome back to Coach Speak. Dustin Martin here with Jamie Bolton. We have another special guest tonight. We have Coach Jordan with us all the way from California. Excited to have him. Before we get going, want to shout out to our sponsors, Tsunami Bar Sports and Team Builder.
Yeah, guys, today's guest is a guy we've really been excited to have on. Jordan Irsik is the defensive coordinator at Folsom High School in California, where they just capped off a 15-game season by winning a California State Championship, 6th in program history, and one of the toughest titles to win in the country. Jordan's journey is what makes this one special. He's been a high school head coach. He coached at the small college level, now leads multiple defensive structure at a nationally ranked program. He's been in the grind. He knows how to go through it, and he's done it largely on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to hit everything from his journey to running his multiple defense. So coaches, get ready, man. Jordan, thank you for being on.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's an honor. I'm a avid listener of what you guys are doing, and it's really good to get on here and talk with you guys.
Awesome, man. So yeah, take us to the moment, the season ended, on that championship. What emotions hit first?
Disbelief. I really don't think it didn't set in for a while. Probably not fully until like the next morning. I think the uncomfortable feeling, because I've heard horror stories about, people like Urban Meyer talking about this, was like immediately after the game, I'm like thinking about the next year already and thinking about, we're going to do this with this guy, and we got this guy coming up from the lower levels. We're going to put him in at that. And, I think that's something that I had to really made sure I hit the brakes on, because that's what I caught myself talking about with my coaches after the game.
Right.
And I'm just like, I can't get out of this headspace. So that, I made myself clear my head the next day and just try to soak it all in on the long drive back from Southern California, and just taking it all in. But I think really, the week after, it felt a lot of gratitude and love for everybody in the program, the kids, the parents, the community, administrators, and our head coach is the hardest working football coach in the country, I'm convinced, and just felt a lot of gratitude and love for him and everybody in the program. And that was a really good feeling that week to have that.
No, I bet, Coach. I've never won a championship, but there's been some games that I've been a part of where we've won, where maybe we shouldn't have, or maybe we weren't expected to. And like, I wouldn't say I'm a super emotional person, but those games, it's like I get a little tongue tied, and I can only imagine the emotions of winning the game that matters all. Is it 15 games out there? Do y'all play 10 regular season, 5 playoffs, or how many is it out there?
Yeah. It's different depending on the section you're into, because California split into different sections. So we play a 10-game regular season with 1 bye week in the regular season. And then we usually get a first round bye, because normally we're the 1 seed in our section playoff bracket. So you play a section quarterfinal, section semi, section championship game. Once you win your section championship, you're basically placed into a 4-team bowl playoff for whatever division you're in, based off your enrollment and past historical success. So right now we're basically in the largest public school bracket in the state, and then the open division is where Mater Dei and Santa Margarita and Bosco and those schools go play.
That seems like a mess to have to manage all that. Like, I
a
bet there's a lot of
moving parts, especially once you get past the first 2 divisions. There's a lot of moving parts with it year to year.
How do they factor in the previous success? How does that factor in? Is like an RPI thing?
Yeah, they have a like some type of calculation that they do that factors in their enrollment size, and just like their path, especially playoff success. How successful have they been? We saw a small school out here that got moved up several divisions this year and still won a state championship, but It was just because they had not lost any playoff games in a while. So
it kind of worked out like with the way that system works then.
Yeah. I think it's good. Just, I'm originally from Kansas, and Kansas hasn't changed their playoff model ever, and it's strictly based off enrollment. And then you go watch a playoff game and it's a blowout, and it's the same 6 teams winning it every year. And it's just, it's cool you get a lot more competitive playoff games, and it's cool to see small teams go up and play bigger schools when they're ready for it. It's pretty amazing to see.
When do you think, what part in the season do you think, man, we got something special, like we truly can make a run? Like for you, was it early on or was it conference play? Like when do you think you kind of click, like, man, we could really make a run with this team?
Oh, we've been doing it a while. I think that's what's bass backwards about this year. We felt like we were better in 2024. In 24, we were 12-2. We missed the state championship game by 1 point. And this year, we felt like we weren't as good, and then still went on a run. I think every year we have a high expectation here, but I usually say around, we try to play a tough preseason. So depending on how your preseason goes, you can figure it out. This year was just kind of a weird year where we're like, we might not be that good, and figured out a way to get it done anyways. So I don't know if there's a real good way to figure it out, to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes those years are like, I remember even the years at York. I mean, they were really talented before we got there, and they made some runs. And then when I got there, I was lucky enough just to kind of be a part of that that staff, and like maybe their third or fourth best team made it all the way to the state championship. I think it's just something about maybe sometimes the ball bounces your way, but sometimes you have some special, pieces in those real, like a good quarterback maybe one year, or a guy makes a couple plays that you didn't have before. But yeah, it's crazy how that works. What was the hardest part about your season? And you said you got a bye towards the playoffs. Do you guys, and you get a bye in the regular season? But what's the hardest part about that?
For us, I think, from a defensive perspective, it's all the different offenses we see. We're still in De La Salle country over here. De La Salle still under center, 21-22 personnel, split back veer. And then we're playing Archbishop Reardon in the state semifinal game, and they're 10 personnel, and they got 5 Division I receivers, a Division I quarterback, 5 Division I linemen.
Wow.
And they're just slinging it all over the field, spread offense. So, I think it's just the wide diversity of what we see, and we have to mold it so much from week to week. So that's gone into so much of our practices of how we build the defense from start to finish, is just making sure it's not a new defense every week. It's got to be recycled somehow to be effective. And so we put a lot of thought into what we're doing and how we're teaching it. And so that way there's carryover and recycling and everything we're doing with the wide range of offenses that we're seeing on our schedule.
Sure. So, yeah, because I mean, Coach, you kind of talk about, you're a multiple defense kind of guy. We want you to kind of get into that a little bit now that we're kind of on the topic of defense. And off camera, we talked about getting some Indiana film. So I want to kind of hear how that ties in, or, do you have the 4-3 mindset like they kind of do, where they try to stay in 4-3 a lot, and that guy has to play Sam and nickel?
I think that's a big appreciation of why I love watching Indiana so much, and that's carryover from those guys at James Madison days. Is they're so multiple, but it's, if you watch it real closely, they're just recycling the same stuff over and over again, and that's why they're so damn good at executing it, and why their guys their fundamentals are just so good. And so we do the same thing. And from a structure standpoint, yeah, it is similar. It's a lot of 4-3 principles. And then we're just trying to recycle techniques. We play a lot of cover 3 and a lot of sim cover 2. And that's our identity. And so you watch them on TV and they're doing the same damn crap. So it's pretty cool to see. But yeah, we try to be multiple with how we present it. We don't want to be sitting in a look where teams can really game plan us and really pick us apart. So we really try to, we change our front a lot. That's the thing we change the most. We don't just sit in a even front the whole game, and we change how we do the even, and then we can mold it to over and under, and then we can change it into an odd. We can change it into a reduction, mint. So we're doing all of that different stuff, and then just we're pairing it all back together so that guys are doing the same techniques, 3 to 5 at every position. They got to just master your 3 to 5 post snap techniques over and over and over again. And And so everything we draw up week to week, we put in a totally new call for the state championship game. It would seem totally new, but like the techniques in the call were the things that our guys already knew how to do all year, from May spring ball through summer through fall. So like when we put it together, it was like, this is a no brainer. Like our kids are going to be able to do this because they're all good at this. So I think it's just really, being simple but looking complicated is the number one thing we're trying to do.
And not having to like change a bunch of personnel to get that done. Do you play with the nickel, or you play with the more of a traditional Sam, or do you change that depending on if you're going to play those teams that are more 12 or 21?
Yeah. So traditionally, it's always been for us. It's like put our best 11 guys on the field and play with those best 11, and there's still a lot of that built into what we're doing. So our Sam is our nickel. It's the same position. So like that guy could be in man coverage on the slot. He could be in a spill under blitz. He could be walked down, capping a tight end and an over under look. He's in the strong hook, like he's doing all sorts of different things, but it's the same 3 to 5 things. And typically the guy that we're putting there is a guy that we've manufactured that we know is going to be good at that. This year, with just us not being as talented as we were in 2024, we did do some personnel IDs for changes on those things, and that did help. And we practiced it really well. We did same thing the colleges do. We have, my assistant linebackers coach has the personnel cards, and, the kids know when they see yellow on the sideline and there's an 11 next to it, like, everybody starts echoing 11, 11, 11, and guys know who's coming on, who's coming off. And, we did that a little bit. We'll probably expand on it a little bit more this year with some of the things we're trying to do, with especially expanding on like how we do load and boss and package those things. But, it's not as much turnover as people think from personnel to personnel. We're talking about maybe 2 to 3 guys at most. Typically, it's just one guy.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we messed around with this year. I stepped into late where the guy had already kind of personnel to 4-3 package, and I had a lot of belief in it. Like we had a Sam who I felt like was just on the edge of probably being a nickel, like a true nickel, but he was a little heavier, and it made me think a little bit differently. There were some games where, we were trading him out with a true nickel when we needed it, but that was also dictated on the personnel we're going against. So we played a team where, they would go true 4 open and they had 4 guys where it's like, man, we can't allow one guy to have the upper hand over another guy. So we would switch nickel, but then, other team starts catching on. So they're trying to sub late. And in high school, they don't give you the courtesy of allowing you to sub with their subs. So one thing after that game was we made sure that no matter what we're in, the nickel knows how to play 21 personnel and the Sam knows how to play empty. You know what I mean? So that was something that, I like that. I like what you're talking about. It's like being multiple with those guys. And I noticed that watching Indiana through this year, it's like, and I think they even talked about it during the national championship on the commentator talked about it. But why do you think like simple but complex matters so much today and being multiple? Like for example, why do you think being a multiple defense is a must to be successful on defense?
Well, one, it's the offenses you're seeing, right? It's like you can't just be an even front quarters team. We've seen a lot of high school teams do that over the past 11 years. It's teams will just sit in even front, play quarters, and they don't vary very much. And then you watch what our offense does, and they just absolutely annihilate it. And so I think you got to present different pictures, especially to the offensive line. They can't presume their blocking responsibilities. The coach should not be able to draw the blocking responsibilities on a card tit for tat and put that in for that week and run it perfectly. Like we need to be able to mix up what they're doing, keep them on their toes, and then changing the pictures for the quarterbacks too. I think one of the best things I ever did was time as a head coach, but like I was calling offense when I was doing that, and being a part of our offensive room at Folsom has made me better about it because I learned how quarterbacks ID things in we know how they work progressions and what their rules are. And so if I know that and I know what's hard for them, then it makes my job a lot easier to do, because I know if I'm changing the picture all the time, then it's going to make it really difficult for them to, be able to actually execute their favorite plays consistently.
Yeah, especially a lot of different post-snap things. Like, that's a QB nightmare. It's like, and that's what I stress to the defense each week is, guys, their head coach probably knows every check and knows how to gash us on every call we make. But does the 16 or 17-year-old, is he able to do that post-snap? And that was such a big deal with the kids when I took over was, listen, we have to look the same pre-snap almost every time. Like, we might have 2 coverage shells that we work from or 2 linebacker alignments that we work from, but we want to make sure that we can run all of our calls from those 2 looks. That way he can't, it's not when the mic's lined here, I know it's coming. No, because we can run 5 to 7 things that way.
It's just like offense, like you think about, all right, if we're going to run, like, let's say trips week, back is unloaded. Well, I can't just have one concept out of that. I can't just have 2 concepts. I'm going to have a whole package out of that. And it might even be like the split, because you defensive guys, you'll pay attention to the split of the receiver and say, they'll only do like 1 or 2 things out of this, guys. Let's jump it, or we're going to put in something. So it's definitely similar in that. Coach, have you found any issues with being multiple to the point where, like, what offenses maybe give you the most trouble? Is it the ones that do a lot of like pre-snap shifts or motions that maybe give you some hesitation on, okay, I'm going to only bring in so much this week because of what the offense may do?
Yeah, I think the teams that are the hardest to defend are the ones that really know how to wrinkle the things they're good at. Dub Maddox is a friend of mine, and he talked years ago about how to, fastball, curveball, strikeout things, and then Bixby really ran away with that idea, and that's the hardest stuff to defend. And so I always said that one of the toughest teams we defend all year is, we've seen them twice in the quarterfinals, and they score as many points on us as anybody we ever play against. And we win that game because we're better, but from a talent perspective, but they do a really good job of pairing things that they're good at on top of each other. And that's, for example, they run pin and pull as their best thing. They're really good at running pin and pull, and then they pair pin and pull with trap. And so it looks like pin and pull, and then they're hitting guys with trap. And then from there, they're hitting play action pass off of that gap scheme pull look. They're absolutely exceptional at running that. That's the hardest stuff to defend, I think, because there's so much preemptiveness with kids wanting to get their reads and play fast. And, we've gotten so good at defending motion and formation, FIB, things like that. Like our kids are very well prepared for that, because that's how we build it into our install concepts when we teach it from the get-go. But like you said, Coach, earlier about just like, you should be able to defend every single look out of this call, right? So like, that's how we do it too. We have our big 6 components that we teach with every install that we do, and they can, but it's just the teams that know how to wrinkle their stuff really well, that's always the hardest stuff to defend. I think.
One thing that I think, me and Jamie kind of attacked and we worked together. He called the offense this year, I called the defense, and I'd run ideas by him like, hey man, what would you be thinking here, and vice versa. And I remember, it was probably a couple years ago, but I told him when I was going through the Alabama knees, I said, man, they call this Starman Rocket. I said, what that basically means is the passing strength nickel when his guy goes in motion, because that changes everything. Like, are you going to dictate the difference in the passing strength? So what I thought Jamie did a great job this year on offense was, when we felt like we were going against teams that would set the passing strength, he would start fib in the boundary and then shift to normal to see, are you going to travel the nickel? Or are you going to keep the nickel? And I thought he did a great job with applying what he knows from the defense to game.
A lot of teams do not. They just, we're just going to stick in our quarters look.
So that's, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody about that right before I got on here, but they were asking me about how we handle FIB in motion. And I was like, look, I'm going to tell you, when I was calling offense, if you were a rock and roll team in your coverage, if I got into FIB and I started motioning guys around, I could get guys wide ass open.
Yes.
And so we don't do hardly any rock and roll anymore because of that. We play strictly Pete Golding slide the box. And so that why the coverage responsibilities aren't getting screwed up. And then we're just teaching guys how to bump their run fit responsibility. And that's been incredibly effective for
bet that's
defending
been
that.
good.
We did the easiest thing known to man. We would just chase him across the field. Like when I was a kid, I just slung it. So I just took the star or the weak safety, just traveled him across, and they just learned two different positions. But yeah, it's not super ideal, but that's one way we did it.
Yeah,
This year,
I always thought the hampering part of that was how it changes your linebackers drops when they're doing that and the communication. It's like too many guys.
Who's
jobs
4-1,
right?
who's the 3 up and back guy, who's it was kind of that was the way we did it. We want to keep the linebackers in the box.
And that was why
those guys doing their same run fit.
I was going to say, and that's why, Jamie, you sacrificed some disguise and slung it because you wanted guys to be really good at what they did. And this year we actually, because I've always been a spin it guy because we're so much one high, and then this year inheriting a system that I had to add my own tweaks to late, and I noticed that cover 2 was a big part of what they did prior to me being there, and I was like, you know what? Man, if they go like twins in the boundary with the 8s to the field, I said, playing 2 really isn't that bad. And then if they motion back to trips with an H, beautiful. We can just spin strong over 2, And so a really great thing Fib is playing a little, trap to the boundary, because it allows that linebacker to apex or over 3 and help with the fit. And now the linebacker can stay to the field. And so that's something I took this year. And I was like, wow, like 2 to Fib starting out is pretty good.
Yeah. So Coach, talk a little bit about like, what are some of the non-negotiables that you take in week to week? So that could be, you talked about the big 6 for each concept that you have, but like talk about like something that'll never change, something that's everlasting that you will take in week to week from a structure standpoint.
Any new install we're doing for an opponent should be recycled techniques. So it has to live in the rules of their positions 3 to 5. So if the D-line coach brings me an idea and he wants me to teach the free safety to do a spill under in this pressure, like our free safety doesn't have a spill under on anything. That's a new technique. Now we got to teach them how to do that, right? So then it's like, so there's things like that. And then the biggest thing is just always the 3 pillars of everything we're doing is everything should be shaped into pre-snap language, post-snap language, finish language. The finish language is always universal. That's your rule for how you make play on ball, how you tackle, how you destroy blocks. Like that's like how we circuit it from May to December is, we have our linebackers coaches working with our corners on block destruction, right? Those kids are learning the same thing that a 3 technique might learn, like understanding that if I'm crossing face on a fitted block, like keeping my power arm, inside arm locked in, engaged to the V of the neck so that I can win back leverage to cross face, and then understand that a same side block destruction is when I can work the rip, right? And then I can bring the near arm through. So like there's those types of things that stay the same, but then like post-snap language always has to live in their 3 to 5 technique rules. And then pre-snap language is, how the architect stuff, right? When you build it as an architect, does it live in this rule of the big 6? So we'll always put everything through a big 6 test whenever hey, maybe we like this over front with a fire zone or something behind it that week, then it's like, okay, we're going to put it through the big 6 test. Does it sound versus every formation and motion they could do? Then we just test it. And if it sounds, it checks out. All right, it's got that. And then it's got the post-snap language in their wheelhouse. We're doing it. Okay. And if it doesn't, then we cut it. All right. Bad idea. You're fired. We have the joke on Sunday meetings. You're fired. Yeah, this ain't going to work. You're fired.
Well, I like it because you don't have any, there's no subjectivity to that. It's like you can bring a good idea, but you better do your research. This is going to check the box. And I think that also gives coaches some guardrails, like, so you don't get off the rails when you're in those meetings. But I really do like that.
And like, that's what I was going to ask you. And you kind of answered a little bit while you're talking, Coach. Like when you put a pressure call in, do you have certain checks to if they go to this formation, or do you try to keep the same pressure call regardless of the formation family? Or talk a little bit about that.
We check to an extent. I wouldn't say we check out of the whole call. I worked for a guy years ago that they did things like that where they would check if they got in this formation, hey, we got to check out of it. But it's like, well, if you're going to call it, let's call it and use it, right? So we have checks to an extent, and checks are, do we swap the blitz to a different player? Is there a coverage check that we still get the same pattern, get the same thing accomplished, but then we're just tweaking how we do the coverage a little bit? Is, changing the flat player to, swapping it to the corner and having the will come, right? So like just simple things like that. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is like, don't ever let an offense entirely dictate what you're trying to do to be aggressive. If you really like something, figure out a way to make it work to everything. And if it doesn't, then it's not any good.
Yeah. One thing I worked on in the off season last year was, I called it a riot package. So basically if we call riot, that means there's a same pressure to these 3 formation families, but the last 2, because we work off of 5 formation families, the last 2, we're going to check a separate type of pressure. We're still going to bring it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we're not going to bring that pressure that we could bring against those other 3. So, but I'm with you. I think early on years ago, I would call pressures, and then I'd be like, if they come out empty, all right, guys, check. We're going to check back to just one high, whatever we're going to play. And I think, sometimes I when I watch defense, like on TV especially, I'm like, man, they're actually kind of beat here, but it didn't matter because the pressure got home. Like, and it's like, sometimes I think defensively, you got to take chances, regardless if it's the perfect call or not. And I think that's kind of what you're alluding to.
Yeah, for sure. Just don't be afraid to get aggressive. At the end of the day, getting the offense off schedule is the number one success factor in winning a drive. If you can get them off schedule, and got to remember the quarterback's he's on a timer on some of these. So it's like, yeah, you might be a little light somewhere, but if it's sound enough to maybe prevent an explosive, but you can get home in time, then you're good. And I think that's the thing with like third down, especially if you look at a lot of third down, we're not really like sim cover 2 on third down, but it's like some of the ways we do it, it's like, yeah, that's not entirely great right there, but how long is he going to have to throw the ball down there to the sticks?
True. Yeah.
Yep.
I want to know about this 3 to 5 rule. I really do like that. You've kind of built your defense, it seems like, and tell me if I'm wrong, like each position or position group has 3 to 5 non-negotiable techniques that they have to be able to execute. Do you build around that? Like, meaning, do you say, okay, this player is good for this position because of these? Or are there players that you're like, okay, I'm going to kind of open up his techniques because he may be a special player, or vice versa? We might have to limit the techniques that he may, be able to execute because he's maybe not a special player.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think a large part of our 80% guys are like, they're going to be really good at these 3 to 5 things, and if we can, as we were evaluating them through the off season, can see that they're going to be good at, sometimes it requires a position change. Hey, this guy's really good at these things. That's going to kind of more align in this wheelhouse at this position and not that position, right? And then the other thing is like, when you do get that special player that can do a lot more, use them.
So you have 10 techniques.
Yeah. So we do have we have one guy like that. And I can't say that's the case for a lot. And we've had a lot of FBS guys come out of here, but I think I've only had one that can maybe do it multiple like that. And he's a young guy. We still got him for 3 more years. He was just a freshman last year and has a ton of offers already. He's very special, but yeah, that guy has more techniques. And
can you elaborate on some of these techniques that, like,
I was going to say, Coach, pick a position group of your choice and tell us 3 techniques that
we got plenty of time. I want to hear them all.
So
every position group, all 5 techniques.
The easiest one is like boundary corner. Boundary corner's got to know how to play a pattern match bail third. He's got to know how to trap the flat. He's got to know how to force blitz. He's got to know how to play mod. So like those are his 4 things. We never ask that guy to do anything else. He just does those.
Y'all
4.
travel? Does he flip? Does it boundary corner always go boundary, or?
Sometimes that's more of a week to week thing.
Sure.
Typically almost everything we're doing is field and boundary based. High school hashes being really wide. we always taking space is the number one consideration for everything we're doing. So some guys' skill sets align better as a boundary corner than a field corner because of that, right? So that's an example. And then, the 2029 kid we got is like he's got film last year playing the posts, playing the outside third, playing the curl flat, playing a scoot skiff, playing a four splits, playing a spill blitz, playing a duo fit, playing a stack fit. He's got and among many other things that I'm probably forgetting, but when you have a guy you can move around, I think the hardest part is figuring out how to coach that guy to be able to master those things. Because the whole philosophy is if you want to be complex by appearance, but simple so that they can execute, they need to be able to master those 3 to 5 things. And so the hardest part is coaching a guy like that, because is he going to be able to master all those other things, no matter how talented he is? So that's where you got to figure out how to spend time with him in the off season and getting him coached up and being able to be really good at those things.
Yeah, I think too, like
good stuff.
anytime, it's almost harder to coach really good athletes because they kind of have their own way of kind of doing some stuff. And you don't want to overcoach them to the point where you hinder their ability to be a playmaker. And, just speaking from the offensive side, it's kind of the same thing. Like, if you talk about a skill set for a slot receiver, outside breaking routes, inside breaking routes, got to be able to restack on the seam. You got to be able to have a release in and out. You got to be able to screen. You got to be able to block. There's a lot of different techniques. And then, you don't want to overcoach that. But it is hard to master if that guy's got to go play the single receiver on the outside. And then he's got to go play, like, if you want to do Wildcat or, there's just a lot that it's hard to master when you're trying to get the ball in his hands. I'm sure it's the same way on defense. If you want to move him around and be multiple and teach him all the things that you have to do for all the checks, it's got to be kind of difficult for sure.
Yeah, because like a lot of people kind of think, safety's safety, but I mean, post safety and down safety are a lot different, especially in like the 3-match world. And, when you're pushing, playing cell technique or taking the wheel through, like it's a lot different than playing the post and then having to be able to, respond to 2 under or 3 fast or whatever it may be. So Coach, you said y'all run 3 matches. Would you say that's your primary coverage? Would you feel like you're more 1 high than 2 high, or a good mix? Like what do you think you are?
We're definitely a good mix. We have some methods of playing more match 3 than others, and then others it probably looks more like zone 3, but the way we're teaching their eyes is still technically match. So it's a little different, but again, it's a lot of rinse and recycling with that. I think you made a good point earlier. It's why I was nodding my head. If you looked at us against a normal 10 or 11 personnel team on the schedule, we look exactly the same pre-snap in terms of our shell. It looks exactly the same on 80% of the snaps. And then, but once the ball gets snapped, it looks entirely different, right? So I think there's a lot of something to that, and being able to make a high school kid ID things post-snap is really valuable. Maybe pre-snap's easy and post-snap's hard in terms of an offensive guy being able to ID it.
So, Coach, when it comes down to it, how do you do your linebackers, when you coach linebackers, do they understand the whole picture in terms of like coverage structure matching the run fit, or do you try not to overload them with that? And like especially like if a safety's coming in the fit or you walk a linebacker, discuss a little bit kind of like how you try to teach them the difference in those.
Yeah, I don't try to overload them to where they know the whole picture. I really try to give them, I really try to make them live in the world where they know what's going on next to them. And so communication's a big part of that. If you're bringing a field safety down into the strong hook, there's communication that happens pre-snap to the mic from that guy. And that's how he knows, like, okay, my run fit is bumped here. My alignment is bumped here. And now my eyes, if I'm in a hook drop, are adjusted to this receiver, not that receiver, right? But I think your pre-snap communication from player to player is I think that's super important, because I think just if you're trying to teach kids a whole picture on the defensive side of the ball in terms of all 11 guys, you're going to have a really hard time doing that and being efficient with the time that you're given. So I think just really player-to-player communication, especially pre-snap, is one of the most important things you can have so that guys know understand what's going on next to them. If the Mike linebacker hears that I'm down call from the safety, okay, and he's just playing a regular 2x2 on this coverage, then he knows he's got a run through fit responsibility, and he's not going to be the force fitter on the puller because that's going to be the guy next to him, right? So like they don't have to see the whole thing, but they got to be able to see just enough of what's around them that they get the picture.
No, I like that. I like we try to teach it similar to like, where's your help? Understand where's your help, understand where you don't have help. And I feel like that's the same exact thing you're saying. Know what your buddy's got. That way you can accelerate what you got. So no,
yeah.
What formation families do you start with when you go to install, Coach?
Again, try to live in the world of the big six. So, put it in a 2x2 with a tight end attached is like when we do like the first diagram on the install card, that's always what the first thing is, because that's like the simplest form of it. And then from there, okay, we're going to go to FIB. How do you handle Y trade? Okay, how do you handle slot motion? Okay, now we're going to put them in trips open. Okay, how do you handle that? Then how do you get them to handle empty? And then lastly, how do you get them to handle condensed? Now I think condensed is actually the hardest one. Condensed is what really makes you break your shell, in all honesty. I think empty
area calls and all that stuff.
Yeah, because empty used to do that with the way defenses used to be structured. And nowadays, I think guys are really good about disguising how they defend empty as well. But when the team gets condensed and they start, what the 49ers do, get condensed, and now they're creating extra gaps and things like that can make them multiple. And then you have man beaters and things like that built off of it too. So then it's like, then you got to be able to defend that. And that really makes you break your shell and show what you're doing a lot of the time. So yeah, that's kind of how we go through those 6 things.
Tell you right now, condensed set, get out the roof, go. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm telling you
right now.
Hey buddy, we ain't disguising anything anymore. Get out of the roof. Like, yeah. And that's a good point. And I think any offensive listener will benefit from that, because it's like, some people, like, for example, we played probably 3 teams this year that would just get in 2x2 stack just to run the ball. Like, and it was just like, just trying to widen it out and run it. And I'm like, if they truly understood like what we have to do defensively, they would have more passes out of this, because if they ran this or this, dude, like we're toast. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think it's great to have defensive guys explain it, because they understand what pressures us. They understand it's like, oh man, like condense set. And like, then you're going to start getting guys that, all right, we're going to condense and we're going to explode out. Let's see if they go back or if they stay in what they're in. And it's a nightmare, man. Defense seems fun, but it can be a nightmare.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I like all the condensed sets, but man, you got to convince those receivers.
Hey, got to block.
You got to really get a war for like 3 seconds here, man.
Yep.
It could be like pulling teeth, but so you go through your formation families, and then from there, do you start to really work in like the multiple aspects of that per call? Is that per call that you do that?
Could you elaborate per call?
Yeah. So like are you installing like one particular structure to those formation families, and then kind of going back and then redoing other structures, or how does that work with y'all's system?
So we give them one call, and then you got to be able to do those 6 things in that one call.
And so the big 6 is the actual things that you do. Okay.
So like flex 6, they got to know how to play flex 6 for every formation. All the big 6 is how you do it.
Yep.
Makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
I like that too, man. Like I'm a big, like, we need to know how to play it in each family. And then like, you can make your triple call if you want, make whatever call you want. And it's like, that was the hardest part of like, when, for example, flex 6 is just Bama's base, weak rotation match stuff. But it's like, they have different calls for like trips nub than they do trips. And like, if you run Mabel or Bronco, it's all 3 buzz. It's all strong rotation, but they have different calls. So it's like Mabel and Bronco. And the hardest part for people to understand is like, why are we calling this different? And it's like, because we may want to play flex 7. And if we call Bronco, that means to trips nub, we're checking this. But if to trips nub, we still want to play flex 7. Hey, if we go flex 7 Mabel, now the kids know we're only checking Mabel to 3 open, like true trips. And it's like,
Yep.
that's the genius part of
But
learning from
Coach,
those guys.
are you don't have checks out of that. So like if whatever you run, that formation changes or it doesn't matter what it is, that you're running it. Is that correct?
Correct. So
Okay.
to Coach Martin's point, like that was how that was done, the Bama days. That is exactly how I used to do it. And then being on the offensive side of the ball and figured out how you can manipulate the defense was where I got away from it, because I figured out if I get in this formation, I can make them do exactly this. And we know exactly what's coming. That made it easy too. It was formation manipulation. So now I've gone the complete other way where like I don't let a formation manipulate the call ever. Whatever we're calling, we stay in it. There's subtle checks here and there, with pressure and coverage swaps and things like that, but we're going to stay in the call because I don't want the offense to manipulate what we're in based on their formation.
Sure.
And that really is more multiple than anything, in my opinion, because literally you are able to defend multiple formations and you don't have to check. So that keeps you, now I'm just kind of thinking out loud, that keeps you within that same 3 to 5 techniques per position that, it streamlines it. That's really awesome. I think that's great.
I think I like having it both ways. So for example, let's just say the call's green. So like whoever we're playing, we may have specific coverages that we want to play to their formations based on who they are, what they do. But then we would have ways to, like you're saying, Coach, we're going to call 4 mod family and we're going to play that. And then obviously there may be a trips check in that family, but it was like we could dictate the difference between if we see 2x2, we're going to play a 2 high structure. If we see 3x1, we're going to play a 1 high structure. But then also it was like, hey, I can make a call where it's 2 high no matter what, like 1 high no matter what. And to your point, like I think that's a really good point for our listeners. It's like, hey, if you show on film 12 times that you're in a 2 to the boundary, 4 to the field, and they shift to trips and you're automatically spinning and you're going to play Meg on the backside, that's all we need, boys. Like, that's all we need. We're going to take our shot.
Or we're going to be an empty and get you in a bubble situation to the field. I think the same could be true for offense. Just thinking too, like, that would be like doing like the flex 6, Bronco call is kind of like if you were to get to the line of scrimmage on offense, didn't like the defensive look and then audible, versus being able to run, hey, we're going to run 4 verts no matter what we see, and be able to have a bender versus the 2 high, all the things that we already do. But that, I do like that's being more multiple in some ways for sure. Do you ever have are there ever any calls that you have a built-in check to something else because you saw a tendency like, hey, they're in this, or you just kind of stay with it?
Yeah, certainly, especially if it's like 14 personnel. Like if it's 14 personnel, like
you better get like
we see the bodies come. Yeah, we see the bodies coming in, right? And then we kind of know, like the kids already know, like, all right, we're checking into this right now. So I mean, I think it's situational week to week. Carry maybe 1 or 2 formation checks, and then everything else is just building off of that 6 formation concept.
I like it. I like the philosophy there.
Coach, what up, man? I'm just picking your brain. I hope nobody that plays you listens to your episode because they're going to get a lot of tips. But who are you on P and 10? Like, what's your philosophy? Like, obviously on first down, we're trying to win the down to put them in second and long, or not a second manageable. But what is your thought process on P and 10?
P and 10. You're talking first down of a possession, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think that changes week to week too. We always have our own P and 10 section in the call sheet, and P and 10 is always with your personnel too. So we always, ours is always categorized by down a distance with the opponent personnel. And so P and 10 will change week to week too, depending on what we're seeing. I think a good philosophy on any first down though is trying to, I don't know about all out pressure, but it's just like having some controlled havoc of how do you get them off schedule right off the bat. If you can get them off schedule, chances of them scoring go way down. If you get them off schedule on P and 10, chances of them going 3 and out are high too, right? And 3 and outs are what you want. So I think for me, it's like we're looking at maybe a little bit more movement on P and 10. I really like doing a pre-snap stem on P and 10. That's my absolute favorite. I can't say there's two play call families or anything that I really try to stick to. If I were to say it was a universal thing, it's definitely making a stem call on P and 10, because you could draw a false start on P and 10. That's always great. And our DN makes the move call. He yells "move" really, really loud. He's got the coaching point of
do not do that, man.
He watches the quarterback's eyes and hands, so he sees eyes don't go down, hands goes up. He calls "move," right, and yells it really loud. So then you're making offensive line communication change, or they're false starting, and either one is usually a really good way to win the first down of the drive.
Yeah, and I think also game planning who the opposing coordinator is on P and 10. So it's like if you're seeing a real conservative guy who they're 85% hand that puppy off just to try to get it going, like you can be a little more aggressive because you can run your run stunts and your run blitzes. And I think it's the same thing on offense, Jamie. Like what do you think as far as P and 10 goes? How's your thought process?
Well, coming out of the huddles, paramount to being able to do some motions and shifts if you want to do that. I mean, I think, once you get in the game, once you start in the flow, it's a little harder if you have a lot of communication tied up in some sort of like pre-snap movement. But yeah, I think I like to be as balanced as possible. But what would be hard is like what coach is saying, like if you find a coordinator, like for me or any coordinator, we're trying to get 4+ yards. So like if we find like it's a quick game concept, it's typical, it could be an RPO. So you can kind of screw the RPO blocking scheme up, with the stem. You could change a pre-snap picture, post-snap. If you're showing a bubble on trips and then you rotate it strong to like just make the quarterback just hold it a little bit if he's going to go backside. I just think little things like that to kind of throw a wrench in will be a thing. So on offense, you really got to be mindful of that. Like, who is the DC on P and 10? Is it P and 10 after an explosive play? What are they? Are they on their heels a little bit? They're playing a little more conservative. Are they, is P and 10 coming out? They're going to bring a pressure. So I think if coach is bringing a lot of pressure, or not a lot of pressure, but if we find a coach that's going to blitz a little bit, maybe you set them up a little bit. Hey, you got to be able to scout that. You got to be able to have that. Maybe it's a first down screen. Maybe it's a first down RPO. Maybe it's something to kind of break a tendency that you have. You have to know your own tendencies too. So like at York 2018, we ran the ball, I think 78% of the time on first down. Well, we also had the other percentage was probably some sort of bootleg because, you're trying to counter that. That led to some explosive plays. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I would be.
Yeah. Coach, man, this has been great. I mean, we're already hitting 50 minutes, dude. What a great talk. I mean, I looked up, I was like, damn, we're already almost at time. But, man, this has been great so far. And Jamie, you want to hit rapid fire, pick Coach's brain a little bit more? I feel like all we've been doing is picking his brain, but let's keep it going.
I know. We haven't even stayed on script at all, man. That's been great. All right, Coach. So we kind of do this, and I'm interested in see how you kind of practice. So, like, what's one drill in your practice? We ask this a lot, but like, what's one drill that you will never like give up, no matter how long you coach?
Step to fit, slide the box.
And so that's quick too.
That's a walkthrough drill where we throw run scheme at them, but we got the DBs, and then we're sliding the box, so guys are sliding into their different run fit positions down the line, and then we just keep throwing different run schemes at them, and we speed walk the drill, and then we say freeze when the fits are supposed to be there, and then if one guy is effed up, then we start the whole thing all over again. And I got that from in Montana, and he got it from Choate when Choate was at Montana State, and that's one I'll never give up.
When do y'all implement that? When do y'all do that?
We have a teach period so we always do like pre-practice, pre-snap prep, which is like your install, getting everything aligned versus the formations. And then we do what's called bulldog ball, which is like red ball. So that's best on best. And it's like a tempo drill. So our offense is no huddle, and we're making no huddle defensive calls, and we're moving the ball up and down the field trying to get as many reps as possible in 10 minutes. And then from there we go special teams, and then we do teach periods. So teach periods when everything like, okay, let's slow it all back down, put it all back together. And so teach period is when we do the step to fit drill.
Cool. So you'll step to your run fit, and then you'll slide to another position for the next one, or is that kind of what you're saying? So
yeah. So just like how 75% of the calls are built is like playing Golding slide the box rules. So we may have the field safety playing the apex guy in the run fit, and then the next one, now, okay, he got some type of FIB, so that's going to slide him into the run through fit response if we're working a stack fit family coverage, right? So then we don't give them the coverage. We just give them the family of the coverage because the family determines the run fit. And then we just play slide the box. And then every single guy knows how to fit those runs. They know how to fit GT counter from all three positions in a stack fit, depending on what the formation made them line up in.
No, that's great. I like that. I'm gonna have to put that in my back pocket and get a little bit more of that from you. What do you think is the hardest part about being a high school defensive coordinator?
All the different offenses you see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, defending under center, split backfield 1 week, and then playing 10 personnel air raid the next week. That's the hardest part because your game planning ain't simple week to week. You really gotta spend some time and breaking it down and figuring out who they are because no one team is the same, not even close.
And then getting a look, I'm sure, is probably difficult too with all the multiple.
Yeah, for sure. We're very blessed. We got a lot of really good offensive players, and we're platoons, so we can get a lot of good offensive players on our scout team to go against. So that helps a ton. But then when we're playing De La Salle and they're under center on a split back veer, that's a hard one to prepare for because
For sure.
we don't run that at all. So we got to teach our quarterbacks like, hey, you can't lose ground on the mesh point. Like you're actually supposed to gain ground on the mesh point, and you got to teach the tackle and the guard that, hey, your deuce block ain't going backside, it's going front side. Like that's definitely the hardest part for sure.
All right, Coach, favorite defensive call of all time, like in a game, one you can remember, dialed it up, talk us through it.
SWAT Adams. So that was a third down simulated cover 2 pressure we had built. We had the opponent's protection rules absolutely dialed up. And so we had it. They had never seen it before. First time, and we named it after the opponent's head coach, whose last name was Adams. So we called it Adams. and we ran
Take
it
that.
we got a 3-and-out on the first drive of the game, and that was the third down call that forced a sack. And we had 4 guys running free on the call. So they literally only picked up 1 guy.
Lookout blocks. Hey, look out, pal.
Yeah.
I would say, man, like I don't know if I have a favorite defensive call, but it's in the same realm you're talking, Coach. Like we teach like face and heels. So if you get face, you do this. You get heels, you do this. And it's like nothing makes me more happier than, and I'm gonna say it exactly how a kid said it this year, when it works and they come to the sideline and it says it doesn't matter what they do, they can't stop that. Because one time the backer's coming free, the next time the end came free, the next time the 3 technique came through, and it's like when you can get the belief out of the kids of they cannot stop what we're doing, dude, it's hard to stop that, man. And it's like that's why it's my favorite, the face and heel stuff. Whether it's a Tom stunt on the center or it's a double B gap mug where you're reading the guard. Like it's like there's so many things you can do.
I can imagine the offensive line coach. We got to block somebody. Like, Coach, which one, man? Like, they're going from everywhere.
Because it's like, man, like one time the kid told me, he said, Coach, like the center was chewing the chewing the guard out. He was like, hey, man, where the gap side? You got B gap. He said, dude, he bailed. I didn't know what to do. Like, it's like, man, it's, and lineman, man, like, but nah, man, that's awesome.
No, that's a good feeling when the kids say they can't, when they're coming off the field saying they can't stop that. That is a really good feeling.
Because the belief is all time high, and even if they can stop it, it's like the kids think they can't, so they're going to play harder. But Coach, what do you think? Like looking back, what's one thing you wish you knew as a first-year defensive coordinator that you know now? Like you go back and tell yourself
how important your assistant coaches are. That's so crucial to have the right staff and guys on the same page, and that's being in charge at a young age, and this is experience as a head coach and a defensive coordinator, but that carries through to this very day. Like your assistant coaches and who those guys are is incredibly freaking important. I don't know anybody that does it by themselves that's got rings on their finger. The guys that got rings on their finger, they got really good coaches working under them.
Yeah. And that's the part of leadership too. And I think that's, you guys just won a state championship and, and this is, we can kind of all talk about this, but like, what has that taught you about leadership in general? Like winning that title, you've been a head coach, you've been a DC, but what has that taught you this year?
Develop the guys you work with,
Mhm.
and invest in them. We had, I always tell guys it's one staff. We just have different responsibilities on game day because we have a freshman and a JV staff beneath us, and I spent a lot of time developing those guys the last couple of years. And then when we rolled into playoffs and those guys' games were done, they're at our Sunday meetings and they're on the sideline and they're in the box and they're doing stuff with us. And the value those guys brought in the playoffs for that state championship run was incredible. They're just phenomenal coaches, and I was wildly impressed by how much improvement they had shown and how much value they brought to being around the kids every day and the staff. And but yeah, spent a lot of time developing those guys over the last 2 years in the off season, and it went a long ways for us down the stretch.
And I think it's important to know that those are the guys that have your back and support you. And it's like, listen, like they're the ones who want to be here to continue to build them because, they may take your spot one day when you move on, and it's like,
Mhm.
we always talk about leaving somewhere better than we left it. And I think
Yeah.
it's the same thing with
Mhm.
development of coaches and kids. And it's like, I have found out because, Jamie was a head coach and I took over for him for 2 years at a private school. And I found out if you don't have the staff, there's no reason to be the head coach.
Yep.
Like it's not worth it. Like you can't have 2 or 3 football coaches and then 7 guys who just happen to coach football. And they're great dudes. And I'm not talking specifically about that staff. I'm just saying in general,
Yeah.
you have to have guys who are engulfed in all realms because I don't think, like you said, there's any teams that have rings where you don't have a majority of guys like that. Like it's
Yep.
just being honest.
For
Yeah,
sure.
in our area, it's getting harder and harder to find coaches. Now, thankfully, we're at a big school and we pay really well too, like in South Carolina. But like North Carolina, it's getting harder and harder to find teachers, let alone coaches that teach. And so it's just the investment piece. When you got a guy that works in the building, his football job is tied up with his teaching job is becoming kind of few and far between.
Yeah.
And I think, and one is about pay, but it might be about, the nature of our game and how people are treated and, like the respect factor and like, there's a lot of things, but yeah, I think when you respect people enough to put them in positions and let them do their thing and then also develop them and help them through it, I think that's bigger than the game. That's something that, those guys that you're talking about on your staff that got to come up and help you, they feel like they added value, I'm sure as well, and that
Mhm.
ring was certainly earned. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Coach, man, this has been awesome, man. It's been a real good chalk talk, and man, I learned a lot just sitting
Heck
here
yeah.
talking with you and the way that I love the biggest part about this game. Someone asked me the other day, they're like, "Where do you want to go clinic?" And I'm like, honestly, I just want to learn how other guys do different things. Like, I want
Mhm.
to, how do you package it? How do you do your big six? How do you do your 3 to 5 techniques? Like that stuff means more to me. Not saying scheme's not important or learning techniques, but it's like I want to know how someone who has won a state championship as a defensive coordinator, well, how do you package the stuff?
Mhm.
And what I've heard today is you try to keep your kids efficient. We're going to continue to do the same things we do. We're just going to change it around a little bit. And I think if I didn't take anything else from it, it's like the best way to be multiple is to be simple by position, but you can be complex as far as scheme goes. And it's like, because when we lay out the install as a coach, it's like, dang, dude, we're doing a lot. But when you break it down, okay, let's look at this position. What techniques are we asking in those calls? Well, that dude's only doing 3 things, guys.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So that's awesome, Coach. I appreciate you
Yeah,
coming on and talking about that.
coach, we appreciate it, man. But yeah, coach, it's been an honor to have you on.
Yeah. Appreciate it, guys. It's been an honor.
All right, guys, see you in the next one.
All right, guys. See you.
Thanks for tuning into the Coach Speak podcast. If you're interested in being a guest speaker on the show, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at coachspeakpodcast1@gmail.com. And if you have a question for our Q&A segment, don't forget to submit it through the form in the episode description. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.